everyone, Neen here from the Hyperactive Bookworm. Today I'm doing the May wrap-up and to see how my first ever dedicated to be read for a month went. To sum up, it didn't go well. Alright, so on my list that I had on my May to be read pile, I had 8 books. I got 4 read, which would be fine if I didn't also read another 9 books that weren't on the list. And I've realized a lot of the problem is when I read, I don't have a lot of time to sit down and read a paperback. I'm always doing something else, or I'm just, in the dark, basically. I read at night a lot in bed, which is probably the worst thing ever. But because of that, it makes it really hard for paperbacks, and I never seem to do very well with those whole lights. I've had all different types, but I'm still going to push through and get through those paper books. They're just not going to be on as fast as other books that I've read. So the books that I did manage to read from the list. Can you sit down, Mazakine? Oh, she just has to be seen, doesn't she? Yes, she's here again. Hello. Sit. Sit. She's crazy. She's making everything bob. Alright. Sorry. The books I did manage to read. So I managed to read The Killing Ground by Sid Parker. Conflict of Interest by Jay. Kismet by T.B. Markinson. And A Place Beyond the Storm by David Green. So they're 4 of the books that were on the list. So I'll go through them ones first. Alright, so The Killing Ground, it started so good. A serial killer is on the loose, a detective, an FBI agent. They're both working the case. There was just so much potential, and I feel like the book didn't carry through. I felt really disappointed. It was still a good read, don't get me wrong, but I just felt like it had the strongest start, and it could have been so much better, but it really sagged by around halfway. And my biggest issue with it was that the 2 main characters, I often couldn't remember which was which. They didn't have distinctive enough personalities for me to be able to remember which was which. That was my biggest issue with it. I didn't particularly like the ending. I had to remember that it is quite an older book, and some cliches back then, they weren't cliches, but overall I gave it a 3.5 star because I still enjoyed it. There was some good writing, but I just think it should have been pushed further. Alright, so the next book I read that was on the list was Conflict of Interest by Jay. It was phenomenal, and perhaps this is also why The Killing Ground didn't really appeal as much, because I was also reading Conflict of Interest, and it's also about police officers and crime and grit, and it's a higher caliber. This was a book I gave 5 stars to. It is fantastic. I also did ask Jay whether it was actually originally a fanfic for Law & Order SVU, and it was, and that made me so happy because it's exactly how I pictured the main character, obviously with a sapphic twist and stads, but it is such a beautiful book, and they're so real and dynamic, and the frustrations and fears that they felt. There's some amazing sections in this book that I literally had like spider leg tingles over my skin. It's just so richly written, and I was blown away. Okay, the third book that was on the list was Kismet. I'm in love with Kismet. So T.B. Markinson's books are normally, they're nice, they're good, but they don't always hit beyond for me. For me, Kismet really did. There was something just divine about the writing. I gave this a 4.5 stars. I was just so taken with the characters as well. And And the story was just so easy to get into and to roll with, and it was such a delicious read. It's about, what is it? It's about two characters, and one of them thinks she's about to be proposed to, and she gets dumped instead. And she meets up with the other character, and there's this instant kind of sparkage, and then the first half, it's just so, I don't know, it's this huge whirlwind, this passion, this one night stand kind of concept. And then you start to learn more and more and more about the characters, and they just become so dynamic and completely delicious. And for me, it is my favourite T.B. Markinson book I've read to date. True, I haven't read too many of hers yet, but I love it. So I can't wait to read more of her books. So that was fabulous. The last one that was on the list that I managed to read is A Place Beyond the Storm by David Green. Now, this is a short read, and it was so fun. It's a post-apocalyptic story, and it's just so intense and brilliant, and you just go. Like, easy 4.5 star for me. It was just a fun but gritty read, and it focuses on the adventures of Panam. She's 14, an official adult in this post-apocalyptic world, and everything changes in just split seconds, and it's just shows just the heavy reality of the post-apocalyptic world, I guess. So totally fun read. So the other books I didn't get to, I have actually started 2 of them. The other 2 I haven't started are both paperbacks. But I am getting to them, so they are still on the list. They're just getting there slower, which is a bummer, but it just turns out that I really don't like being told what to read, even by myself. And this is a bit of a problem. Alright, so now, what's the rest of my May? So I've got 9 other books that I read in May. So yeah, I read a total of 13 books, which was phenomenal, because I also released my first novella. So that took up a lot of mental space. I'm impressed I read so many. Alright, so we've done The Killing Ground by Sid Parker, Conflict of Interest by Jay. Next book I read was The Cobra Queen by Tara Moss. I ended up doing a video that summed up briefly my opinions and my feelings about the whole series to date. So The Cobra Queen is the 4th book of the Pandora English series, and by far my favourite. I feel like the main character Pandora really comes into herself more, which is great because she is growing up. She's really coming into her magical abilities, and the story is just really propelling itself. The language was beautiful, and I feel like Tara Moss has just really gotten into it even more. Like, as a writer, I would like to think that my later books are going to be better than my earlier books, because you should always learn and grow, and I really need a drink and develop your writing, and this book just shows how much it's developed. And there's this one particular part where Pandora talks about grief, and because I read this on audio, I went back to it so many times just to listen again. It was so powerful and strong, and it made me just a little bit quiver with it all. It was just so fantastic. Next book I read was Gretel on Her Own by Elna Holst, and this was another great read, like 4-star reads. I've had so many 4-star reads this month. It was so nice. And Gretel on Her Own, it's this beautiful retelling of Hansel and Gretel, but it actually takes place 20 years after the whole Hansel and Gretel Candy Cottage, Witch, all that. And Gretel is, as the title explains within the first few pages, on her own. And she's having to deal with life beyond that story of her and her brother and all the after effects of it. And it's just fantastic, and it has a sapphic twist, and it is honestly one of my favorite retellings. It's just so great, and it has the sweet tooth element all the way through it. At the start I did think, oh, Gretel, you're a bit frustrating. You're kind of naive or just going along with stuff and you're not seeing what's happening around you. And there's these little things that make you go, oh, hang on, she's not that at all. And the development on it, and it's absolutely delicious. I do like that word today. It's dark, and I love the darkness of it, and it is a short read. I believe it's a novella, but it was just great. It was one of these unexpected enjoyments. I'd never heard of this author before. I'd never read them, so I didn't know what to expect, and I was really pleasantly surprised. Okay, now this book has been recommended by so many authors, so many readers, and I finally went, oh, stuff it, I'll give it a try. It's called And Playing the Role of Herself by K.E. Lane. Holy Hannah, I totally get now why it's recommended by so many people. One of my favourite les fiction authors, Claire Lydon, is constantly talking about how much she loves this book. And I get it. It is just... there's so much to it. The dialogue and the internal thoughts of the main character is just absolutely hilarious and brilliant and real. And my God, the swearing in the book is so fantastic. I also love that this is a single perspective book. Single point of view, sorry. And I just really love when it's just a single point of view. It just makes everything so much more layered. And the characters are just all fantastic. Like, Cade is the main character. And she is this actress. And she has this major crush on a co-star. And the co-star is just amazing. And while you kind of hint at what's going on with her and what's not, you don't know. You only know what Cade knows. And that makes it so much more impactful for me. I also really, really love Cade's best friend, Liz. She is just the most fantastic, just fantastic side character ever. She's you want to kind of strangle her a bit. Yes, Mazikeen. Yes, darling. You want to kind of strangle her a bit, but then you realise that's what best friends are. They tell you the stuff you don't want to hear. They have opinions you don't particularly agree with, but you love them anyway. And it's just great. Like, and the sex scenes were definitely fantastic. And the main character, she was just... there was so much depth to her, and I really, really love that. So the next book I read was In Solitude Shadow. I actually got this as an ARC copy. It's written by... that's the dog. Not written by the dog. It is written by David Green. So, In Solitude Shadow, written by David Green. I actually received an ARC copy for this book. And, oh my God, it was a drocking great read. I personally believe this is the best book of David Green so far. I've read quite a bit of his work, but this was absolutely next level. It's a novella. It's quite a long novella. It's dark fantasy. It's an ensemble cast, though for me, Kayleen, one of the cast members, for me, she was just everything. I didn't know until I read it. She's a women-loving woman main character, which just was an extra level of awesome for me. obviously. But the writing was delicious. The fantastical elements, it seriously felt like an epic fantasy. Reminded me of the older sort of fantasy books without the over description. It's the world is so developed, the different races, the different magical systems. It's absolutely phenomenal. The relationships between the characters are dynamic and complicated and real, and the words he uses are just great. There were so many quotes that I just kept highlighting in this book. It is now out, so absolutely go have a look. It is fantastic. It is the first book of a series. I believe it's a trilogy. David has actually done some live videos, one with me and one with the publisher, Erie River Publishing, and actually mentioned that, yes, it's a trilogy, but he does plan or have ideas for writing other stories in the same world. So that's really exciting to me. All right. Now, we've already talked about A Place Beyond the Storm, also by David Green. All right. Hunter's Way by Gerri Hill. Now, I had this book recommended to me, and I struggled with it. I really enjoyed the crime mystery of it, but I felt like, I don't know, I was just a bit disappointed in some of the aspects of it. It was really, there were some pretty gritty scenes, and there were awesome twists and turns, and it was a great mystery. My issues came with the characters. There was an Ice Queen character, which I'm all for, but I felt like she melted too much. I think the problem, for me, I really like Ice Queens that melt only for the love interest. But she melted a lot, pretty much everywhere. And it just, to me, it didn't really hit home enough. I felt like there was too much history with her co-workers and stuff for her to have melted so much and so quickly. But like I said, this is my personal opinion of Ice Queens. I do also think that it was a little unrealistic, the shift, the extreme change of their opinions toward her as well. It seemed too quick. Prejudices just were dropped, and I felt like there needed to be more time, more hesitation. I do believe that people, of course, can be made to think of things other ways, but human nature doesn't always allow that with certain people's personalities. It is a slower development, and I feel like the characters that were created, they were really great, and I don't feel like they kept true to themselves to the end. My other biggest issue, and this is a spoiler, is that there was a rape in it. So complete trigger warning. There was a rape in it, and I'm not particularly fond of how the character dealt with that afterward. I know that, it just seemed a little too fast and a little too, unrealistic for the character to go from the extreme with the recovery. But like, again, I said that's my personal opinion of it. I still actually enjoyed the book. I know it doesn't sound like I did, but I did. I did enjoy the crime, and I did enjoy the characters. I just think the changes were a bit too sudden and quick. Like they could have been fleshed out a bit more, more of a curve with it. But it is the start of a series as well, and I would be interested to read the next book to see how these things continue. All right, the next book is actually a reread. It's Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I did a video on this as well. Actually, I did a few videos last month about the books I've read. This was wrapped around my kind of commentary on audiobooks, because at the end of the audiobook of Stardust, Neil Gaiman has an interview and he talks about audiobooks and the different dynamics of it. But for that, the thing that struck me the most was when he said, once a book's out there, it's not mine anymore. It's the audience's, it's the readers. And I really loved that idea, because we can interact with books all different ways. It's the story that needs to be told, however you get it told to you. It's about the story. It's about getting to know the story. 5 stars. I absolutely fell in love with this book years ago. The movie, I hated when I first saw it. I have grown to love it, to accept that it is different medium, so therefore it cannot be the same. I love the movie for what it is, but my heart will always still be in the book. All right, so the next book I read was Next of Kin by Jay. So this is the second book in the Portland Police Bureau series. This is the book that came after Conflict of Interest, and oh my God, this was fantastic. I thought the first one was brilliant. This just went up a whole other level. So in the first book, you got the 2 perspectives. In this book, you kind of get 4. So you get the carry-on from the 2 characters from the first, but then you get 2 other characters and their discovery of friendship and more beyond that, and it is just fantastic. And I love the flashbacks and the memories and just those little things that remind you of what happened in book 1, but you see it from these other 2 characters' perspectives, and it's fantastic and it's great, gritty and realistic, and the twists and turns are just fantastic. The other characters that come in, the developments of the story, you just can't help but rush through Jay's books. It's just so natural a progression of what happens. All right, the next one was another one of Jay, and it's actually a novella set after Next of Kin, and it's Change of Pace. And I'm not the biggest fan of Jay's shorter works. I definitely think her strength lies in the bigger stories, although I really did love this. It was a cute tale about Cadence's mom, and she comes and inadvertently helps with some lesbians moving house, and she's kind of pushed into this world, and her assumptions and her ideas are just suddenly thrown out everywhere, and I think it's adorable. And I do love that she doesn't just start waving the flag. Because it's not real. Like, I would love that every parent would just accept it, but what this character was, it's not something she could just turn around and go, yep, it's all good. And it's great to see how her mind has to kind of slowly shift. So that's really cool. The last book for the month was one of my favorites. Oh my gosh. And I've heard good and bad things about this book, but here are my opinions. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal, El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. I no doubt absolutely butchered that name, and I'm so sorry. But the book is amazing. So it's... Okay, so it's told in a dual alternating third point of view, but also first person point of view, as these 2 opposing soldiers basically of this time war start writing letters to each other. So there's blue and red, and I felt like they were just beautiful. There are a few times throughout the book where I didn't understand everything, every line, and that was okay. Once I realized that this book is basically poetry in motion, poetry and prose. There is this great story throughout it, this love story, this very Romeo and Juliet kind of story, you know, to star-crossed lovers. And they're on opposing sides. And to begin with, it's almost like they taunt each other. They see skills in each other that are worth the challenge. And so they start writing these letters and, you know, these little hints of how they're going to kill each other. And then it slowly develops and they start talking about the different experiences they are each having in the different times where they are. And they're changing the things to create the world more to their liking or to the other liking. And I just found it absolutely beautiful. I really want to get a paperback copy of this book. I know, but it was just so good, and I want to be able to scroll all the way through it and highlight everything and dog tag the ears, and I just want to be able to do that because it is one of those books that I can see myself reading and reading and reading and just pulling out these beautiful descriptions, and they're just amazing. Some of my favorite lines, I can't help it. I've got to read some out. So, and most of the ones I've picked here, they're just short ones, but there are full paragraphs that I've highlighted. We're all deviant in our different ways. It's so good. Adventure works in any strand. It calls to those who care more for living.
Right. So my phone just died. I won't go in and reread all those quotes from This Is How You Lose the Time War. I don't know what happened. And that's fine. But so that sums up my May wrap up. I am not actually giving myself a June to be read pile. I have a few books I've already started and a few books I really want to sink my teeth into. I'm still working through Without a Front, the Producer's Challenge. I love it, but it's one of those books that I need to be in the right mindset for because it is so consuming. And being time poor, I don't have a lot of downtime that doesn't require me to still have my mind half on looking after my son or keeping an eye on work or other things. So I am still getting there. I am still chipping away at it. So we'll see how far I get in June. And yeah, hopefully let me know if you've read these books, if you agree, if you would disagree with my opinions, because everyone's opinion's valid. And yeah, hope you like the wrap up and I'll see y'all later. Bye.